Hi, it's Gary. Welcome to today's video. Today, I'm going to try something different. We're going to take a look at 3 parallel pens from Pilot. The 6mm, that's mine. That's what I use when I'm doing my ink swatches. I like to use that because then I've got the same pen being used on them all. The other 2, I've got the 3.8mm and a 2.4mm. These ones, don't tell the wife, I've borrowed them from her craft room. I thought, let's look at the different widths. And to have the control, I'm going to use this. This is a Lamy All-Star, and it's got the 1.5mm nib on there. So I thought we'll try that first, and then we'll look at these other 3. These 3, I'm just going to be dipping them. I'm not going to be filling the cartridges with ink. The ink I'm going to use is by Cult Pens, and it's Little Pip. So this is a really nice, it's like a dark purple, and it's got a bit of a gold sheen. I'll show you my swatch card before we start doing the writing. So join me now, down on the mat. Let's sample these pens, see how they write, and then just look at the differences in the lines. Here we are down on the mat. So as I say, the ink by Cult Pens, and it's Little Pip, actually made by Diamine. It's even labelled as such. I'm going to pop that to one side. Here's my swatch card, just so you get an idea of what I'm expecting to see from this ink. So there we've got this gorgeous purple background colour. Then on top of that, we've got this lovely, I'm going to call it gold, but it could be maybe even a bronzy type sheen to it. I think it's a really nice ink. It's actually one of my favourite inks for titles and headlines. The paper we're going to use, this is an A4 notebook. This is a Rhodia notepad, so it's 90 GSM paper. I thought we'll use this instead because with them all being wide nibs, I don't think I'll get all the writing samples onto one page, but I thought with A4 I've got a better chance of doing that. So the first pen we're going to write with is the Lamy All-Star or AL Star. This one has got a 1.5 nib on it. There we go. We're going to get straight in with writing today. I'm not going to spend too much time looking at the pens because we're all about writing today. So we've got here a Lamy AL Star. I'm trying to get my hand in the right position so we can see this coming out better with a 1.5 nib. The ink, Cult Pens, Little Pip. Do you know I can't spell today? There we go. Let's see how many times I made that mistake going through today's video. Line variation, so we've got. So that was with the ink. So that one actually had the nib rotated. I'm trying to get it so I can go straight down. I'm struggling today. There we go. That's better, isn't it? So that's going down. This is the line going across. So you can see a massive difference. And that comes out in the actual writing. There's some of my S's offered with 8s. I'll write my sentence. Well, I think I need to give this pen a bit of a clean. I only use this for headlines, so this has been inked up maybe 4 or 5 months, and it only gets used a few times each month, which is why I think maybe the ink's been drying out, and that's given me some issues with the railroading. You know, normally, because it's only for headlines, I'm writing maybe 2 or 3 words at a time. There's a flow test anyway. It does keep up. So I think I need to give the nib and feed a good clean to get it really working how it should be. So that was the AL Star. That's essentially my control pen. Now it's time to get in and start actually using the Pilot pens. So I've just given the ink a little bit of a shake, pop that to one side. And the pen we're going to start with is the 2.4 millimeter. Now, to me, that doesn't look 2.4 millimeters. But when I look here on the side of the pen, that's where it tells you the size. That is telling me 2.4. So I'm not 100% certain it's telling me the truth. I think there might be a little bit of a fib there, but I'll go by what's saying. I'm going to assume that is 2.4. Let's dip the pen in the ink. Okay, lots of ink on there, isn't there? So we've got here a Pilot, parallel, and it's got 2.4. Actually seeing it writing, I can see maybe that might be 2.4. Ink. Just going to re-dip. Line variation, so I think you can already see. There we are going down. There we are going across. I'll have to dip again. I'm only going to write the first line of the sentence because otherwise I'll use my paper up so quickly. I'm also not going to do a flow test for these because, again, you know, we can see the ink's coming out nicely and it's only been dipped, so I don't think the flow test will actually help any. So that was the 2.4. Next up, we've got the 3.8. Definitely looking wider now. Let's dip her and let's do some writing. So we've got here a, wow, Pilot, parallel. This time I'll try and spell parallel correctly. As I say, oh, we're out of ink, just going to re-dip. I'm struggling today with my spelling, so 3.8. Cult Pens we got to dip again. So certainly I seem to be having to dip more as it goes wider. This is what I was saying, bit of experiment this. I've never tried this. This is literally the first time I'm using these two pens. Line variation. Going across. So it seems to be a bit wider going across as well. But that could also be down to the angle that I'm holding the pen at. Going to do another dip. See how far we get with the sentence this time. Not very good for doing writing, really. Wow, I can only get 3 words out of that. So definitely, we're getting really chunky now, aren't we? Just going to move this paper up ever so slightly for the last pen. So this is one that I use when I'm doing my swatches for doing the big swatch part of it. This is a 6mm nib. Let's dip on in. So we've got here. That's wide. Not that nice for writing with. I'm going to try writing over 2 lines and maybe make the letters a bit bigger. Well, I know it's a bit of a waste of time doing this. We're going to do it anyway. Line variation. I do like this better by writing over 2 lines, rather than trying to squeeze it as I was into the one. And then a sentence. I can only get 2 words of my sentence on there now. I'm now going to step away from the computer for a few minutes because, as you can see, this is still very, very wet. I want to give this time to make sure it's nice and dry before we take a final look. So now we're back. It's been 10 minutes since I did these writing samples, and looking at this on the 6mm, especially where I'd done a fresh dip of ink, still wet. On the 3.8mm, especially again where I've done fresh dips, still wet. Same here, still with that 3.8. When we look at the 2.4 there, that looks all dry. Same with the All-Star. What I'm going to do, I've got 3 sheets here of just plain kitchen roll. I'm going to use that as a blotter. I'm just going to pop it over and hopefully get rid of any wet ink that's on there still. I mean, you can see on the paper where it's come through, and that's 3 sheets. Right. So yes, we've smudged it a bit. Yes, we haven't given it the proper amount of time to dry. Let's take a look at the results. So we'll start with the Lamy, which was our control pen. Here we can see we've got a lot of that gold coming through, a lot of that gold sheen, virtually overpowering the purple there to my eye. This was the only one which wasn't dipped. The 2.4, still usable. I would still be happy to write with this one. Again, we've got some gold sheen, but to me, we've got more of the purple showing than the actual gold sheen. Remember, this was the only one that fully dried. If we come down to the 3.8, I know we're starting to get a bit squashed, aren't we? So you could just about get this onto one line. Not sure I would ever use it for writing. I think I would stick with this one for things like writing messages and cards. That was the whole point when we bought it. But here you can really see that gold sheen. You know, especially on the lines where there was still some reasonable amounts of ink on the pen. Where it was drying off, you know, we're then seeing more of just the purple coming through. And then with the 6mm, here we go. You know, again, same story really. Where the nib was still wet, yes, we're seeing the gold sheen. Where I've had to dry it off, obviously, we aren't seeing as much of the sheen. But things here like the W in Wizard, the parts of the U, parts of the M, parts of that P, you know, the C there, and the U and the L, getting quite a fair amount of that gorgeous gold sheen. Really like it. Now remember, after 10 minutes, I did blot it off. If we turn over the page, that's quite impressive. I mean, yes, you can see it, but it's not bled through, and there's nothing bled to the next page. Quite impressed with that. Going to move this pad out of the way. When I was doing the writing, I was also writing on a second notebook. Here it is. This notebook, it's Endless Recorder, 68 GSM Tomoe River paper. And this is A5 in size. So again, let's look at the writing. So the top one, which was done with the Lamy, you can see there, virtually all of it has got that nice gold sheen to it. And I was able to write the letters through to the letter P. With a 2.4, again, I'm seeing a lot of gold sheen. Not so much on the letters because by then the nib was running dry, but certainly when it was freshly dipped in that first couple of words, you know, pilot parallel, and I know it's spelt wrong. I cannot spell to save my life today. Let's move on down now to the 3.8. Again, very similar story. With the 2.4, I could only get to the letter K. With the 3.8, yep, lots of gold sheen coming through. I could only get to the letter I this time. And then with the 6-point note, again, you can see we've still got some wet parts where I've done fresh dips. But where it's had time to dry, again, we've got that purple with that gorgeous gold or bronzy type sheen. Just going to put my blotting paper in there in case I have a little accident. And to turn the page. So on this 68 GSM paper, you can see we've got a different story. These ones where we're seeing it bleeding through, they're the ones where I'd just done a fresh dip, so the nib was still fairly wet. But for the rest of the writing, that's not been a problem. We've had nothing coming through, and certainly nothing on the other page. Oh, I didn't quite get the blotting paper all the way over. Never mind. Let's summarise. Let's fetch in the pens. So I've got, hopefully if it won't roll away, I've got the 2.4, the 3.8. I know I'm having to hold on to it with my fingers. It's terrible for rolling away. And the 6.0. I haven't put them in the nib holders yet. I've given these a good clean whilst we were waiting for the ink to not dry. Enjoyed this experiment. I'm going to keep the 6.0. Whoops. I'll get them out of the way. They're not helping, are they? I'm going to use that 6.0 and carry on using that when I'm doing my swatches. It's just too wide to use for anything else. If I was going to write a card after seeing these, I'm going to use the 3.8. I like the way it looks. I think it gives a nice line, but it's still legible. I can get through to the letter I on this A5 page. With that 6.0, I could only get to F. I think it does look nicer than the 2.4 in it's just that little bit wider. And what I would do is I would spread it over 2 lines rather than trying to squeeze onto the one. I think that would really add to the look of it. The 2.4, yeah, I like that. I may actually look and see if I can get a wider nib than the Lamy All-Star, which I've, again, do you know, my brain today, the All-Star was a 1.5. Let's change that to a 5. I should be taken out and shot at dawn, I tell you. I like this. As I said, the whole idea of this video, it was an experiment just to see how it would go. I've not used most of these parallel pens, and certainly not for writing. So I quite enjoyed doing this, and I'm liking the results I see, especially with that 3.8. And I may actually put some ink in the cartridge and try writing with that with ink in a cartridge just to see what the difference is. So it's my experiment using Pilot Parallels pens. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. Do you use the Pilot Parallel pens? Now, I have seen somewhere, I think you can actually pull the nibs out and use them on other pens. Not something I've tried. Might be something worth experimenting with down the road though. Please hit the thumbs up button every time you like, every time you comment. Just helps with the YouTube algorithm. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel so that you can get new videos as I release them. I'll talk to you again soon.